At the age of 13, I was written off academically. I was told I wouldn't amount to much. My brother, also from a traditional and privileged background, was the perceived brains of the family. Parents and teachers were encouraging him to apply to Oxford University and pursue a career fitting to his academic ability. I, on the other hand, whilst attending one of the most prestigious and fee-paying schools in Liverpool, was performing poorly and was generally uninterested in academia. I was more interested in boys and makeup. I know, but that was okay. It was okay because my parents were sure that, like my mother and my grandmother, my education was simply a way of passing time until I met a suitable husband who would then care for me. Painfully shy, lacking in confidence and ambition when it came to choose my O-level topics at 13, I'd done so badly in previous exams. I was told I wasn't intelligent enough to study the topics I wanted, such as physics, would be lucky to pass maths, and should focus on more practical things like needlework and cookery, because that would help me in my future. Yet despite this, through a twist of fate, I got that physics O-level, and thankfully was saved from cookery and sewing. As an educator myself, I often wonder about this. How come I got labelled as a poor student and responded accordingly? And what enabled me to change? There's research about this phenomenon. Turns out it's not just me. You may have heard of the Pygmalion effect, coined by the psychologist Robert Rosenthal, named after George Bernard Shaw's play, which features Eliza Doolittle, the flower girl. Rosenthal and his team administered a test of general ability, TOGA or IQ tests, to all of the students in California's elementary school. Regardless of the results, they randomly picked 20% of the students and told the teachers they could expect these students to be academic bloomers, to do well. At the end of the year, all of the students were retested. The 20% who were labelled as bloomers showed a significantly greater increase in their scores than the other children. More recent research has shown that teachers interact with high expectancy students, those they think will do well, much differently than they do with low expectancy students, those they think will perform poorly for some reason. They give praise and compliments to high expectancy students, yet they criticise low expectancy students for poor performance. They probe and get know-how out of high expectancy students. With low expectancy students, they give them less time to answer questions or just tell them the answers. They notice things and make connections with the high expectancy students. Low expectancy students are often seated at the back of the room. They are given less feedback, less smiles. When a high expectancy student performs badly in an assignment, the teacher treats it as a one-off and thinks that they'll carry on doing well and treats them in that way. If a low expectancy student does well in an assignment, the teacher puts this down to luck, a one-off, and carries on treating them as if they're going to do badly in the future. They overlook the exceptions. And as we can see, this column is familiar to us. This is more solutions focused. This column, the low expectancy students, is what we would call problem focused. So, we get what we expect. In addition to how we're treated, context we know plays a significant role. Infamously, in 1971, psychologist Philip Zimbardo created an experiment that looked at the impact of becoming a prisoner or a prison guard. He set up a mock prison in the basement of Stanford University in their psychology building, and then he selected 24 undergraduate students to play both the roles of prisoners and guards. Those selected had no criminal backgrounds, no psychological issues, or major medical conditions. The 24 volunteers were then randomly assigned to either the prison group or the guard group. The experiment was scheduled to last for 14 days. However, it had to be stopped after just 6 days. While the prisoners and guards were allowed to interact in any way that they wanted, the interactions were generally hostile and dehumanising. The guards were aggressive and abusive towards the prisoners, while the prisoners became passive and depressed. Even the researchers themselves began to lose sight of the reality of the situation. Zimbardo, who acted as the prison warden, overlooked the abusive behaviour of the guards until another researcher raised concerns. We've seen plenty of pictures like this in the news recently. It doesn't matter who you think you are. When you're put in a given context with strong expectations, you'll start behaving in a stereotypical way. Guards or prisoners, therapists or clients, business class or economy. We know what to do without being told. So context can play a powerful part in how we interact and behave. Yet we are not actual prisoners of our thoughts. We can change context, shift and reframe them, and be aware of their power and mitigate this in all sorts of creative ways. Let me share with you a couple of cases from our work which demonstrate this. So, we were training employment advisors, people responsible for helping the unemployed back to work. I was sitting in on a session with a new advisor, and he was interviewing Julie. That's Julie. She was over 65. I've been told that not only is she rather old for the employment market, but she was stubborn, uncooperative, a grumpy old lady, and that even when the advisors managed to get her interviews, which wasn't very often, she performed poorly, providing short and uninformative answers. All of this supported their view that she was unsuitable and unlikely to be employed in the near future. I listened for the first 5 minutes to the advisor ask, "How many jobs have you applied for since last time? How can you improve your CV? Do you really want to work?" Julie was getting more and more agitated. She finally threw her hands in the air. She said, "I've had enough of this. I've answered all of these questions before. I just don't know what to do next." The advisor, at a loss, asked me to continue the interview, so I stepped in. Thinking about what I'd heard, about what she wanted, I said, "So, if we could have a conversation that would get you closer to getting more interviews, would that be useful?" "Yes, that would be helpful. I've only had 2 interviews in 6 months. Although they don't like me in interviews, they say I've got no hobbies." I then asked a classic Steve DeShazer question. "So tell me, what do you do with your days?" "Nothing." "What do you do?" I could only work with what was there, so I asked her, "What does nothing consist of?" "I watch TV." "What do you watch?" "The right stuff, current affairs chat show." "So you like current affairs?" "Yes." "What are they talking about at the moment?" "They're talking about the Labour leadership election." "What else interests you then?" "I go to the library and research people." She'd recently been researching Obama, a huge amount of research. I only had slightly better days than usual. Julie then tells me she's taken a bus trip to Cambridge, she's been to all of the museums. We carry on talking for another 20 minutes, where she tells me what nothing consists of. Amazing. Thank you. Hugely touching to hear this woman talk. The advisor was now taking copious notes about her interests, and when we'd finished, Julie thanked me and she went off to rewrite her CV. Rather than stubborn and unemployable, the advisors started talking about Julie's experience, her interest in current affairs, and her abilities as a researcher. It was like a buzz around the office. Within a week, they'd arranged 2 interviews for her. 2. A few years ago, we introduced Solutions Focus working into Reading Borough Council in the UK. Rather than training everybody in the local authority, because it would be practical, we developed champions, and it was their role to share the approach with others and embed it throughout the organisation. It was so successful that one of our champions, Wendy, asked to develop a group of community champions. These people who lived in deprived areas of the borough themselves had little education, many were unemployed, and some had been referred to social services themselves. The one thing they had in common was that they'd all volunteered and they wanted to make a difference within their own community. Having introduced them to solutions-focused tools and principles, each champion took on a project. And this was using something in the community. So projects ranged from street parties, setting up a street party, to road safety. Let's meet Charlotte. She'd been very quiet during the workshop, and Wendy wasn't sure if she would be suitable for the programme, as she had a number of recent family issues. All we knew was that the title of her project was Setting Up a Community Cafe. What we didn't know is what she shared with us when Paul interviewed her.
My personal project is keeping my house tidy, because I nearly lost my children to social services because of the state my house got into. And I'm using Solutions Focus with a way of looking at what I have done to keep the house tidy and the small steps I need to take to keep it tidy.
How's that going?
That's going really well, actually. My house is not quite spotless, but definitely tidier than it used to be.
What's changed?
It's tidy. I spend time doing housework now instead of sleeping.
And the result of that?
The house is tidy, my children have friends over, my children are allowed to live in my house now, which is obviously a major win for me.
And the other project?
My community project is St John's and Stephen's Community Cafe, which is based in a church in East Reading, and we are trying to develop it to become busier and the hub of the community, I suppose, where people can come and share information and ideas, learn skills, and just have a laugh and a chit-chat with friends over a cup of tea or coffee. Fair trade, of course.
And what progress have you made there?
Recently we organised a big party for our wedding, which was attended by about 35 people. We followed the service by printing off the order of service from the internet and joined in with the hymns and the prayers, followed by a wedding buffet, and everybody dressed up in their wedding finery.
How's solution focused ideas and tools helping you with these projects?
We're looking at what we have done rather than what we haven't done, and learning to take it one step at a time instead of trying to achieve everything in 1 week, because that's not going to happen.
And what difference is that making for you?
I feel more positive. I can see now what we have done as a community cafe as opposed to what we haven't done. So it's making us feel a lot more positive about the whole experience.
So you can see, give people the tools, help them connect with their resources, expect something useful will happen, and people do the most surprising and impressive things. Here we have people previously labelled and defined by context, who when treated differently, responded differently. And what happened to me? You might ask. No, but I'm going to tell you anyway. When I was 13, and just before I was about to embark on my education into the world of domesticity, My parents lost every penny they had. My father's business went broke. We had nothing. But as a result of that, there was no longer the money for me to go to the expensive fee-paying school, and I went to the local state school. As I come from such a reputable establishment, the teachers assumed I must be clever. And they let me choose the subjects I wanted, which included physics. And they put me in the top sets for everything. I, in turn, responded and met their expectations in most areas. I got my O-levels, I got my A-levels, an undergraduate degree. And at 22, here I am, graduating from the London School of Economics, one of the top 3 universities in the UK, with a master's degree in industrial relations and HR management. The rest, as they say, is history. We often talk about how much money we've saved our clients, or how much we've increased their profits and efficiency. Yet it goes far beyond this. What we do as coaches, educators, leaders and managers, and how we do it matters. It makes a difference. How many Julies and Charlottes have you met? How many more are out there? Which labels and which contexts can you change? Thank you.